Okay, and to continue what it was I was saying. Um, so the whole direction this conversation, this argument, this debate goes. This is where it goes. It goes. Okay, Leif. Well, then you say you have ADHD. Okay, so what is that? Because what happens is when you're young, you learn that ADHD is this thing, or this ADD is this thing where these kids in school, in elementary school, they're they're the troublemakers. They're the ones that are crazy and hyperactive and can't shut up and do things that disrupt the classroom. Those are the ones that are always labeled with ADD and ADHD. At least when I was growing up. And and the secret is they're on Ritalin. You kind of learn the ones that are on Ritalin because you see them going off to the special ed class and they get their medications during the day. So this is how we learn the beginnings of what ADD and ADHD are. Okay, so but here's the deal, that this is the hurdle that people just don't they just don't take the time. You could all figure this out, but you don't take the time to figure it out. So so at this young age, we get this establishment. Our thinking is established where we think that ADD and ADHD is this thing where these kids are hyperactive, and that's what ADD and ADHD is. And they can't study. They throw tantrums. They get in fights really easy. And yes, maybe that is something. First of all, this whole thing is just nature. We're nature. We're creatures of nature, and this is we're all different. We come from all different parts of the world. Different tribes. That's what we're from originally. So some tribes lived in the north, some lived in the south, and we're all just this type. We have the characteristics of those types of people that lived in these parts of the world originally. That's where our roots begin. Our genetics. It's why turtles don't live in Norway, because they just never could survive there. This is just obvious. So that's you have to understand that before you understand anything else about this whole thing. If you don't understand that, then if you understand that, then you understand that some of these hyperactive kids when we're growing up, they're just hyperactive because their genes came from people, or maybe they're now a mixture, but they came from people that they needed hyperactive kids, youthful people, to survive in these areas of the world where they originated from, where the longest collective period of their genetic history, wherever it came from. I believe that that dominant trait that made them survive there is still carried with them here because it's so fresh. We're only 3 or 4 generations into the United States, basically, maybe a few more generations. But that's not very, in terms of the genetic history, that's a very short period of time. So if you were from a more warring kind of protective tribal society, I don't know, in some part of Europe, you were able to survive there. Your ancestors were able to survive there because right off the bat, your children were able to survive there as well, and that's why you were the dominant force there, and then that's why your genes possibly are why these kids, when you're growing up in elementary school, why they're the crazy ones, and they're the ones that get labeled with ADD and ADHD. So if you understand that, then the next leap you have to make is the whole idea of what a doctor does. There is no book from God that says this is ADD. What it is it's a theory. It's a psychological theory that are created by doctors. It's like a math theorem. It's like the periodic table, but it's not the periodic table. The periodic table is like a. It's not math, but it's something that's there in space. That's an obvious puzzle that we put together of the pieces that exist. However, a psychologist or doctors like that, they create these theories that aren't based on these puzzles that are there. It's more of a theory of personality traits and things of that nature. And then they apply that. So they come up with these ideas. So there are these disruptive people in class when they're kids, and they cause problems. And a way to calm them down is to give them Ritalin. And it's just back in the prairie days, back in the days when we were settlers and we were, you know, take a shower once a week. You know, maybe the crazy ones were the ones that survived better because they could withstand the shocks of the living in the natural environment, the more ruffian way of survival. You know, they had that crazy impulsive energy that helped them get through those tough times. And if they hadn't had that, maybe that's why other children died, because they were weak and they didn't have the energy. So now we give them Ritalin to calm them down because it disrupts the classroom. So there's all these different ways you can look at it. Okay, so for right at a young age, Ritalin and these and Concerta, these drugs that they give kids for ADD and ADHD, they calm kids down. And that's what we come to learn that ADD and ADHD is. However, as people get older, even the crazy energetic kids that are just young, their personalities change, even with or without the medication. I mean, this is nothing new as far as I'm concerned. I think we've always had people that have been really energetic and outgoing. So then we get older, and you know, and don't forget, doctors and medications. They used to be like a snake oil. Doctors used to be kind of like a snake oil salesman. There was kind of this mythical kind of science. It wasn't. There was this mythical kind of notion that doctors cure things based on these medications. You know, tree barks and. You know, and there's all these different kinds of doctors, and this is a very short time ago in human history. This is like 100 years ago. We didn't even have refrigerators 100 years ago. Remember, so we have these doctors that were many of them were, you know, they weren't licensed by any government. You know, somehow they got to be doctors, and you know, so our general sense of doctors and medications come from this kind of mythical kind of, you know, way back. I mean, not too far. You know, we had probably tribal, you know, smokehouses where we would go for the sick people. Would go and they had these ancient techniques for healing people, steam houses, and all these kinds of things like that were just on the brinks of understanding medicine even more. And by the way, have you ever thought about where does caffeine come from? When you buy a Coke, where does that caffeine come from in there? Is it synthetic? Is it? Do they take coffee and press it out of coffee and then take it from the coffee into the Coke? I mean, think about it. Where does that caffeine come from? When we have coffee, we know it comes from coffee beans that are ground up. But when you get a Coke, where does that? You see, there's never any stories on Dateline or anything or 2020 about the caffeine. Where does it come from inside the Coke? Because isn't that a mystery to you? It's a mystery to me. What color is caffeine? Because they must add a heck of a lot of caffeine into those giant drums of syrup that they use to make the Coke. So the caffeine must have a color. I wonder what it looks like. So, you know, so think in terms of that now, of the chemical composition of caffeine. It's a chemistry. It's chemistry is what it is. Same thing with THC and all these alcohol. It's all chemistry. Okay, so the Industrial Revolution happens. America is born, and now we have sanctioned, licensed doctors. We have people that are professionals that are learning and more each day, each year. New ideas, new ways of looking at medicine and diagnoses are happening all the time. You know, now when they test for prostate cancer, there's no physical exam. It's all done with the blood. So, I mean, did you even know that? So now we go back to the whole ADD and ADHD thing, and the whole label that was put on, at least my generation, to the young kids that are crazy in class. So now, then you get a little bit older and you start going to college, and let's say you're someone that cares about diagnosing yourself, and you go to the doctor and you buy books on